Good evening, everyone. We will be calling this evening's meeting to order. The April 25th, 2022 council meeting is being called to order. Jenny, will you please call roll? Oh, I'm sorry. We reconvened. We did that earlier. We had an executive session. So this is a reconvening. So may I have, Amy, would you like to lead the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have an update. Dan Sullivan, if you'll please come forward to tell us a little bit about the Memorial Tournament. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you very much. I have to admit, I've never been in this building, and it's spectacular. Congratulations. And further admit that I don't think I've been to council since 2019. A lot's happened since then, and I apologize we haven't been back in front of you. Plenty has gone on, and I thought I'd give you a quick update on the memorial since I haven't been here since 19, and a lot has changed as we enter our 47th year. And then just talk a little bit about our plan relative to some signage and branding that we have planned for Bridge Park. So 47th Memorial, the week of May 30th, honoring Ben Crenshaw and Charlie Sifford. Charlie Sifford was a groundbreaking African-American player in the 1950s and 60s. He lived in Ohio. This would be his 100th birthday during the week of the memorial this year, so we're going to honor him on Wednesday along with Ben Crenshaw. We couldn't be more energized. We have a full week with no limitations, and we are doing extremely well. There's a lot of pent-up interest, both in a corporate and individual standpoint. So I think you're going to see an incredibly full and active Memorial Tournament week. A lot has changed since I last got together with you here. So the golf course completely changed. Many of you know on that transformation that Jack Nicklaus started in 2020, finished last year for the tournament, but another year of maturity. And it is an absolute star and will continue to be world-class in every way for years to come. We have a new presenting sponsor in Workday. So I think many of you know that we made that transition after last year's tournament. Workday is a San Francisco-based company that saw the value in the Memorial Tournament through its long history as well as through the relationship with Jack Nicklaus. And they take over for Nationwide. The good news is Nationwide hasn't left. They have a really significant relationship with us, primarily through our support of Nationwide Children's Hospital. Some of you were at the Legends Luncheon just 2 weeks ago that I thought went over really well and produced $1.3 million for the hospital. So Nationwide's with us on the charity side as well as from a volunteer standpoint as well as entertainment. It's almost the best of two worlds. We've got a new energized partner for the next 10 years. And we've got our previous partner who's really committed to make sure that the community continues to thrive and go in the right direction. As always, we're focused on community and charity. So on the community side, we're going to return those events that have been lost here over the last couple of years. Our youth clinic over at the Columbus Zoo at Safari. Our volunteer party, which is a massive party that we have on the Friday night before. The 4-miler, which we did do last year, but it was in a reduced fashion. 4Fest and partnering with Crawford Hoyne, again, the Memorial Tournament Crawford Hoyne in the city of Dublin to create that 2-night festival on Friday and Saturday night of tournament week. All of those have been created to ensure that we're more than a golf tournament, more than 4 days of competition, that we're really kind of reaching out and making sure that we have something for everyone. One of the other elements is Military Appreciation Day on Wednesday. We've really decided to have the ability to take that to another level. Not only will we celebrate the military on Wednesday, but through the support of Jobs Ohio, we will have what we call a military outpost on the golf course. So during the 4 days of competition, if you're a military active member or retired or veteran, you have a hospitality space to go to. So you can show your ID and walk on in and watch the 13th green action without paying anything extra, just being able to go out there and be welcomed and thanked for your service. So we're trying to add certain things around the golf course just to bring more uniqueness and community atmosphere to it, and I think that we're going to be successful in doing that. Allison's going to probably turn on a PowerPoint here. So when we switch gears here a little bit to the branding around Bridge Park, again, we have not done anything in Bridge Park for 2 years now, obviously, because we really didn't have anything to promote. And so we're returning on a number of different elements and adding some new. And I know that you'll talk about this later, and I don't want to belabor the point, but just explain a couple of things. Because of what you've created with Bridge Park, with the public park and the bridge and everything around it, we're proposing to use the space and just promote the fact that we have this great event in town. So this is an example. I don't know the name of your building over here, but it's the public space right at the foot of the bridge on the east side, taking over that wallscape and covering the entire space with a branded piece. And then looking inside Bridge Park, number one on the wall scape that we have done probably 3 years. This will be the fourth. And council has looked at that as a great opportunity. In the past, we see it as a nice way of welcoming people into Dublin. And we have a great shot with Jack and Patrick Cantlay from last year that will adorn the side of that building. And then going inside the space, just taking corners and branding throughout to ensure people understand that we're here and we're celebrating the fact that the tournament's here. We're doing this for a couple of reasons: to make sure we're reintroducing, know people can come to the tournament and interact with it, and also introduce our new sponsor in Workday. I think one of the elements is this proposed 3D image of a golden bear. I'd like to say that we appreciate opinions, so we'll take any input back. I'd like to say that materials and size and structure are something that I'm paying attention to. I don't want to confuse things, but we may look at changing the image. But the materials, the size, the structure is what we're focused on. And the image may turn more towards promoting players as opposed to a golden bear. And so that's something that we're toying with a little bit here. And I don't want to waste anybody's time, but also just share with you that we're interested in using that corner space as an ability to create a 3D image. And then some simple light pole signage that will spread throughout Bridge Park, celebrating our past winners and our honorees. And some additional signage here with the AC Hotel on the way in, and then there's some inside that we've sat down with the AC Marriott and talked through ways to help brand the space just a little bit further for the tournament. So the bigger ideas are obviously outside. They're focused on really utilizing the space, knowing that's a destination for many. I think you know this, but we use Bridge Park parking for all of our hospitality patrons. So anybody who's parking and going to the tournament to use our hospitality in the space goes through Bridge Park. Shuttle system takes them out to the golf course. So it'll be quite busy and active throughout the week of the tournament. So I wanted to share that with you, offer up any questions that you may have to me, and make sure that we're sharing all that we have.
Thanks, Dan. Does anybody have any questions for Dan? John?
You know, I'm getting questions on the new structures out on 745.
Yeah. Yep.
Can you tell us something about them?
Absolutely.
I guess you're moving the maintenance facility, right?
That's right. So our maintenance facility, which has been in its current space, which is behind 17T, 16T, right off of Murfield Drive there, has been there since the origin. The buildings and the space have become inadequate for our maintenance facility and operation as they've become more modernized. And so we've repositioned our maintenance over on what we call the 6T lot, our property across from the 6T. And that space will be state-of-the-art and really help our operation be more efficient on the golf course. We will take the existing space and we're going to repurpose it for the future. And I think you know this, that all of our broadcast compound is at the Country Club at Muirfield. That will be repositioned on our side of the property going forward. So we'll get the CBS Golf Channel PGA Tour production team to be on this side of the golf course for 1 week out of the year.
Well, this is going to be a very exciting week. We're all glad to have everyone back, and we thank you for all the work that you've done, the organization, to bring so much attention to Dublin and the Central Ohio area and the tournament. It's going to be fabulous, and so we wish you the best of luck, and you know we're all here to do whatever we can to make it successful.
Great, thank you. And I'll end with thank you to council and all of City of Dublin. Incredible partnership that we're proud of. We're glad that you're going to be back at full steam, utilizing the tournament to entertain and also just use it as a backdrop for the city. Incredible amount of broadcast footage that we'll have this year, and we look forward to putting Dublin on pedestal. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I would like to invite the Director of Public Services, Jay Anderson, to come forward to receive a proclamation about Arbor Day. Arbor Day, Earth Day, it's big time for the Earth, right? All right, so you know that we're going to give you this proclamation. So in 1872, the Nebraska Board of Agriculture established a special day to be set aside for the planting of trees. And this holiday, called Arbor Day, was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. Did you know all this history? Did not. Okay, you're going to learn as we go. And Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and trees can be a solution to combating climate change by reducing the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cutting heating and cooling costs, moderating the temperature, cleaning the air, producing life-giving oxygen, and providing habitat for wildlife. And trees are a renewable source, giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify the community. And trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. So I, Jane Fox, Mayor of the City of Dublin, do hereby proclaim on behalf of the City Council April 29th, 2022 as Arbor Day in the City of Dublin, and I urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day and to support the efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. And I urge all citizens to plant trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and future generations. So if you'll take this, would you like to say something? Sure.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Just a quick reminder, we will be holding our Arbor Day celebration, not on Arbor Day, but this Saturday, April 30th from 9 a.m. to noon at Belvedere Park. We'll be planting a tree at 10 a.m. in commemoration of Arbor Day, and our forestry team will be on hand to demonstrate proper tree pruning and proper tree planting techniques in the correct way to mulch your tree. All that said, we will also have free tree seedlings to hand out, and we will hold a raffle for a larger tree at the conclusion of the event. So we really hope to see you all out there, and happy Arbor Day.
This is the citizen comment portion of our agenda, and an opportunity for citizens to comment on any topic that's not on tonight's agenda. Is there anyone here who wishes to make a comment, or have we had any comments? Lindsay? All right, thank you. On the consent agenda, the April 11th, 2022 regular meeting minutes, is there a request to remove this item from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I move to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second? Thank you. Jenny, please call roll.
Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Ms. Cram?
Yes.
Mayor Fox?
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Second reading, public hearing ordinance 13-22.
Rezoning 35 acres from R1 Restricted Suburban Residential District to PUD Planned Unit Development District, Mount Carmel Hospital Northwest, to accommodate up to 314,520 square feet of development in 2 phases consisting of an inpatient hospital, ambulatory care facility, and medical offices. The site is located northwest of the intersection of Sawmill Road and I-270.
Our staff report this evening is our senior planner, Nikki Martin. Welcome, Nikki.
Great, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of council. As identified in your packet, there are no updates since the first reading, although there is one clarification to ensure alignment between this ordinances and subsequent ordinances on your agenda tonight. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Our applicant is here as well tonight.
Do we have any public comment on this ordinance this evening? Would you please come to the podium and state your name and address, please?
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. Thanks for your time this evening. I'm Joe Miller of the Voorhees Law Firm, 52 East Gay Street, Columbus, here on behalf of Perry Township. I'm joined by Trustee Chet Cheney and Development Director Joe Smiley. I sent to each of you a letter on April 11th. I will leave a copy with Ms. Delgado for the record. And as explained in that letter, Mount Carmel lacks legal access to Sawmill Road, specifically across the township property at 7125 Sawmill Road. That legal access does not exist, and the preliminary plan before you tonight, if approved, does not have legal access to Sawmill and cannot be built as depicted. An access easement held by a prior owner was abandoned and even specifically disclaimed through a quitclaim deed given to the township. And in any event, under Ohio law, that prior easement could not support this proposed increase in use. I want to be very clear. The township is willing to work with Mount Carmel on a reciprocal cross easement for access. There have been preliminary discussions, and I reaffirmed that intention to Mr. Coma earlier this evening. I would hope and expect that Mount Carmel wants to be a good neighbor, just as the township would like to be, and that we will work this out. But under this city's laws and this city's code, you can't approve a preliminary plan and rezone to a PUD based upon legal access that simply doesn't exist. I would ask this council, and I would presume Mount Carmel would agree, that in addition to the other conditions for approval proposed to you, that you condition any approval upon Mount Carmel working this out and obtaining legal access to Sawmill Road so that the plan that's depicted before you can actually be built. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other public comments? Council, do we have any questions or discussion?
So I just wanted to clarify, because we have some residents here and also probably online, that as we go forward, the final development plan will be going back to planning and zoning. So all those additional details that aren't shown on here will be worked out. And just for the record, one of the items that I would urge the commission to consider is the dry detention basins. I think those should be reconsidered and possibly some other type of stormwater treatment. That's all I have.
And I think
Thank
the
you.
only other item that we had talked about last time was mounding and planting adjacent to that entranceway that would come off
Yes.
of Bright Road. So I would ask that as you move forward with the Planning Commission on this, that you would take into consideration the appearance and functionality of the dry basin and also mounding and screening of the Inverness property from this as well.
We will certainly do that.
All right, thank you. Jenny, will you please call roll?
Ms. Cram?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Mayor Fox?
Yes.
Ms. Saludo?
Yes.
Ordinance 1420-22.
authorizing the provision of certain incentives to Mount Carmel Health System to induce it to establish a Northwest Healthcare campus within the city, and authorizing the execution of an economic development agreement.
Our staff report this evening is our Deputy City Manager, Megan O'Callahan.
Good evening, members of council. As discussed in detail at the first reading, the Mount Carmel development is expected to create approximately 342 jobs with a projected payroll in excess of $32 million annually with the first 10 years of operation. The annual payroll withholdings for the new employee positions is estimated to be $5.8 million through 2035. The proposed economic development agreement remains largely the same as was presented on April 11th at the first reading. The proposed incentive is a 15% performance incentive for 10 years on net new withholdings capped at $913,942. The target withholdings for each of the calendar years are as outlined in the memorandum in your packet, and the ROI to the city over 10 years is nearly $4.9 million. Based on feedback from City Council at your first reading, we have clarified the language in Section 2F referencing the city-owned land of approximately 1.5 acres located at the southeast corner of Emerald Parkway and Bright Road. The language now indicates that from 2022 through 2027, the city agrees to make this land available to Mount Carmel at no cost, contingent upon the commencement of construction of a future phase medical office building located along Bright Road and incorporating PID 273-008616 within the development plan. So we believe that language to be much clearer than before. And with that, staff recommends council approval of this ordinance, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Megan. Do we have any public comment on this? All right. Do we have any council questions or discussion for Chris?
Megan, I'd just like to thank you for putting the maintenance issues in there. So I think that provides clarity. Appreciate that.
And also, I think it was very beneficial to break down the cost-sharing pieces, and I think that is very important. And also the fact that this is able to bring forward the Bright Road improvements that we've been looking for quite a long time, and I know the residents have wanted to, so I think that helps us, everybody, understand how we were able to get this done, so appreciate that. Jenny, will you please call roll?
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Mayor Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Ms. Cram?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Ordinance 15-22.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into an infrastructure agreement with Mount Carmel Health System for the Mount Carmel Health System project.
Back to you, Megan.
Good evening, members of council. The infrastructure agreement also remains largely the same as was presented at the first reading, with changes proposed to sections 1, 2, and 3. Since the first reading, Mount Carmel's traffic impact study has been reviewed and accepted by the City of Dublin and the City of Columbus, and due to the unique nature of the development with the city's previously studied Bright Road corridor improvements, which were just mentioned, a non-traditional funding approach is being proposed to address the transportation improvements. With regard to section 1, the Emerald Parkway main entry improvements, staff has determined since the first reading that this intersection will be controlled by a roundabout, and this has been discussed with the Mount Carmel team, and the agreement now outlines the proposed cost sharing for this intersection based on the decision that it will be a roundabout. With regard to section 2, there's very minor edits that are non-substantive to clarify that the language is addressing the entry point as opposed to the access drive. And then, as was previously mentioned, section 3, we did add the word maintain to clarify the maintenance responsibility of the internal drives. And then, as was also mentioned, council requested that cost information, and that was outlined in the memo as well. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions council may have. Thank you.
Do we have public comment? All right, welcome.
Thank you. Lorraine Lutton, CEO at Mount Carmel, 807 City Park Drive, or Avenue, Columbus, 43206. And just two brief comments. One, I want to thank you Mayor, council members, staff, your staff have been incredible advocates for the city of Dublin, and we appreciate their partnership in working through some of these last issues, so thank you. And then secondly, I am committed, and we are committed in good faith to being good neighbors. Any questions for me?
We're sure you'll be very good neighbors.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Lindsay? All right. Council, any questions? Amy?
Megan, I was just, since we do have several residents here tonight, could you just, I know, for their benefit, explain what the city is doing, the city's responsibility, what we're doing on Bright Road, and the process, kind of just the process, what they're going to expect next, and how that's separate, I would guess, than the final development plan?
Sure. So as was mentioned in the first reading, I walked through the background of those improvements. So there had previously been a study conducted on the Sawmill corridor, which also included the Bright Road corridor over to Emerald Parkway. And that study made some recommendations as it pertains to Bright Road. And those recommendations have been under consideration by staff, and we've really been waiting on the appropriate time such that we knew what the use would be and the development in the area was going to look like. Now we believe to be the appropriate time to move forward with those improvements on Bright Road, to also incorporate a turn lane into the Mount Carmel development. And we earlier this year initiated preliminary engineering for the Bright Road corridor improvements, and then we plan to proceed with detailed design. So that project is being coordinated and led by our engineering division team, and they are pursuing that project as they would typical CIP projects. So we'll be requesting funding for construction of those improvements as part of the upcoming CIP process. Those improvements that were recommended through the Sawmill corridor study remain the same as we are currently studying, and those improvements are needed with or without the development. So it's really a matter of timing. As I mentioned, there will be a turn lane necessary for the entrance point to Mount Carmel off of Bright Road incorporated in those improvements. Engineering staff, in partnership with the communications team, will engage and communicate with residents in the area as the project is designed. And there will be a public meeting at some point at the appropriate point in the process when there are some visuals and renderings available to have a informed discussion about those improvements. Does that help answer?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? I just had one comment. Do you think, I noticed in number 6 of the agreement about the easements, let me go to that one. Do you anticipate that the roundabout will create a need for acquisition of easements to properties? Because it wasn't mentioned in the...
We do anticipate that there will be acquisitions or land needed on either side of Emerald Parkway. That'll be determined as the detailed design for the roundabout is pursued.
Okay, thank you.
And the agreement does specify that any right-of-way or easements that are required from the Mount Carmel property are required to be donated by Mount Carmel.
I thought that was the case. It just didn't talk about the roundabout easements, but I anticipated that since it was throughout the body of it, I figured that that was the case. But thank you for clarifying that.
You're welcome.
If there are no other questions or comments, Jenny, will you please call roll?
Vice Mayor DeRosa,
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms,
Yes.
Ms. Cram,
Yes.
Mr. Reiner,
Yes.
Mayor Fox.
Yes.
Mr. Keeler,
Yes.
Ms. Aludo.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Introduction, first reading, public hearing, ordinance 16-22.
Amending Ordinance 8421, adjusting the ward boundaries of the City of Dublin as required by Article 9.04 of the revised charter.
I'll introduce it.
Our staff report is by our Assistant City Manager, Homer Rogers. Welcome, Homer.
Good evening, members of council. During the last city council meeting, we discussed the requests from Franklin County Board of Elections to make some adjustments to ward boundaries that council had approved under Ordinance 8421, and those boundaries are shown on the map in front of you. so that Franklin County can meet their obligations under the Ohio Revised Code for drawing voter precinct boundaries. Keeping the city's rights in mind under home rule, council provided guidance to staff that would accommodate the Franklin County Board of Elections request. Ordinance 1622 proposes an amendment to Ordinance 8421 as follows. Area G, which is part of Muirfield, would remain in Ward 3. Area G and a new area that we have on the map that we delineated, Area J, is River Forest, and that would move to Ward 3. Area E, it's a small piece of Hawks Nest, would return to Ward 4, and Area I, a very small piece of Bristol Commons, would also return to Ward 1. This map depicts the resulting city wards proposed under this amendment. Staff recommends Ordinance 1622 amending Ordinance 8421 be passed at the next meeting of City Council on May 9th. And also with that passage, staff will petition the U.S. Census Bureau to make adjustments to their enumeration block boundaries to align with our neighborhood plat lines in Hawks Nest and Bristol Commons. I'm prepared to answer any questions you may have this evening.
Thank you, Homer. Do we have any public comment? All right, council, do you have any questions concerning the ward boundaries changes? All right, well, our second reading is scheduled for May 9th. At that time, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Ordinance
see you then.
17-22.
Petitioning the Board of County Commissioners of Union County, Ohio to adjust the boundary lines of Jerome Township so as to exclude that territory that, as a result of annexation, now lies within the corporate boundaries of the City of Dublin. Roger Warren Gordon, trustee of the Roger Warren Gordon Living Trust, and Denise Ann Gordon, trustee of the Denise Ann Gordon Living Trust, annexation of 44 plus or minus acres, Ordinance 8717.
I'll introduce it.
Our staff report is from our law director, Jennifer Redler.
Good evening, members of council. As the clerk just noted, Dublin City Council did accept the annexation noted from Roger and Denise Gordon, and it was approved by the Union County Commissioners prior to that. To ensure that fire coverage remains uniform within the city, it's the city's practice to file a boundary adjustment petition and transfer the annexed properties from Jerome Township into Washington Township. Ordinance 17-22 would authorize our office to petition the Union County Commissioners to adjust the township boundaries such that the annexed territory would be removed from Jerome and put into Washington Township. We've provided both Washington and Jerome Townships with notice that this legislation is being introduced and considered by the city. Staff recommends approval at the second reading on May 9th, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jennifer. Do we have any comment on this? All right. Any questions for concerning this ordinance? All right. The second reading will be May 9th, and at that time we'll make that decision. Ordinance 18-22.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a real estate purchase agreement for certain property owned by the Orr family LP in Franklin County, Ohio, authorizing the execution of related agreements and documents and appropriating funds therefor.
I'll introduce it.
Thank you. Staff report is by Jennifer Riedler.
Good evening again, members of council. City Council has discussed the need to make strategic real estate purchases. Such purchases of land enable the city to control the ultimate use of the property, and additionally, as the city continues to build out, opportunities to purchase properties will diminish. The city is engaged in discussions with Orr Family LP to purchase approximately 52 acres of land. The purchase price of the premises has been determined to be $155,000 per usable acre. The price of the premises is consistent with purchases made in the immediate area and in fact adjacent to another parcel that council recently authorized the purchase of. The real estate purchase agreement, if authorized by City Council, explains all the terms, conditions, and closing requirements. Staff recommends utilizing the general fund balance to provide cash for 100% of the acquisition cost. Staff recommends approval of Ordinance 18-22 at the second reading on May 9th, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Do we have any public comment on this particular ordinance? All right, thank you. Council, do we have any questions for Jennifer? All right. We will be hearing this at our second reading, scheduled for May 9th. Introduction, public hearing and resolutions. Resolution 19-22.
Accepting the lowest and best bid for the 2022 street sweeping contract and authorizing the city manager to enter into contract for the project.
I'll introduce it.
Thank you. Our staff report is from our Public Services Director, Jay Anderson.
Good evening again. Mayor, members of council, before you this evening is Resolution 19-22 to accept the bid for the 2022 city street sweeping contract. This contract is executed with a maximum 3-year term with the option to renew each year based on the performance of the contractor. This contract includes 5 complete sweeps of the city throughout the year and has an optional library, garage sweep, and pressure wash that can be executed on an as-needed basis. Based on the only bid received and submitted by SCA of Ohio in the amount of $135,944.60, which is within the overall operating budgeted funds of the city's current operating budget, SCA of Ohio, previously known as Contract Sweepers and Equipment, has successfully provided street sweeping services for the city for the past 3 years. Staff has thoroughly reviewed the bid, and SCA of Ohio has historically provided satisfactory services for the city. Staff is recommending approval of Resolution 19-22, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any public comment on street sweeping? No? Any questions about street sweeping?
I've got a question regarding the initial sweeping that'll be done at the 270 interchange. So there's a lot of vegetation that's growing up through those cracks. And I know, I don't have the, we didn't see the contract specifications, but you indicated there might be some power washing that happens as in conjunction with this, or what will take place there?
So we're going to attack that in a couple different ways. Our landscape maintenance contract, that's actually in the central contract. We actually have those responsibilities for spraying the weeds and trimming the weeds in that contract. We also have the ability with our internal staff to power wash those areas off. And then this contract will cover the regular sweeping of those areas throughout the year.
Because I think that they'll probably need to have some mechanical agitation of those heavy debris areas before we would want to sweep them to be most effective. I don't know if you want to, run a track loader or something through there because some of the piles are, 6-8 inches tall of debris, which I just want to make sure that we go through the process, that we get out before the sweepers and we do some physical agitation so that when the sweepers do come through, it's clean when they're finished.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll make sure it's done correctly and we'll take that extra step. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jenny, will you please call roll?
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Mayor Fox?
Yes.
Ms. Cram?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Resolution 20-22.
Appointing a member to the Board of Trustees of the Bridge Park New Community Authority.
I'll introduce it.
Our staff report is by Vice Mayor DeRosa.
Thank you very much. Lynn Reedy's term on the Bridge Park New Community Authority has expired, and she has expressed an interest in being reappointed for another term. Council has been impressed with her knowledge and her expertise that she has demonstrated while serving on the board. Therefore, I am pleased to bring forward this resolution for her reappointment to Bridge Park NCA.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment on this resolution? No, all right. Council, any questions or discussions? No. All right, we will. Jenny, will you please call roll?
Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Ms. Cram?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Mayor Fox?
Yes. In other business, we will be talking about memorial tournaments, temporary signs, and our staff report this evening is our Community Events Director, Allison Leroy. Welcome, Allison.
Good evening, members of council. Sorry that I'm going to pull this up right now, but you have seen it, so at least it's not going to be new information now. So we do have a request here from the tournament to do the signs that you saw earlier tonight. And some of these are some that we've seen before, and some of them are new signs to the district. Again, I'll go over them very quickly. This first one is obviously a new one because this building wasn't there the last time there was a tournament. So this is actually, if you notice, this is the north side of the pavilion on the East Plaza. This is what we've done multiple times in the past. This one was also very similar to one done in the past, just obviously different graphics. This is a new request, and as you heard tonight, that they are looking at whether it is going to be the Golden Bear or maybe something else. They're working with their fabricator at this point, but they're still looking at something around the scope and size, which is about 10 foot by 11 foot. The street banners, this is something we are still working with the manufacturer of our actual poles to see if these brackets will work and be safe. So that is something we're still have to make sure that's actually going to be a safety issue or if they're going to be okay to put those up. This one is also one that they've done before on the AC hotel exterior. And I can answer any questions you might have on these signs.
Thank you, Allison. Do we have any comments? Questions?
I've got one, Allison, regarding is there some opacity to that one that is on the pavilion at the park?
Yeah, it won't be a dark quarter behind it. It's got, I haven't seen the final, and they were still working on some of the final stuff that with their own person, but the one I saw had kind of almost like pinprint or pinhole kind of things that let the light go through.
I just think it's important there because those bathrooms and after hours, and I want to make sure that we have some, I think the sign is lovely, but some opacity so that it doesn't look like a cave.
Councilman Reiner, did you want to speak?
What's the timeline, do you know? When are they up and when are they down?
Yeah, they will put up, everything will start going up on May 23rd. The AC, the large one, won't go up until the week prior to the tournament, and then they'll be taken down on or before June 12th.
Okay. Thank you.
I just had one comment. I don't like the one on the hotel, the really big one. I think it's a distraction for drivers. I'm probably the only one. I know you guys have approved it in the past, but I'm just throwing out there that I would disapprove that one.
Kathy?
Yes, thank you. Allison, kind of a question. Is this the first time we've sort of done banners in the city other than?
Yeah, if you remember, we used to have the banner program downtown, and they've done banners over near the tournament in the past. So this is a new request. I do know that there is some thought that they would probably like to make these permanent, and they know they would have to go through a whole other process. This specific one is just specifically for this period of time.
And so when you say would make these permanent, you mean the ability to do banners on a permanent basis?
Yeah, they've been talking to Crawford Hoying, and it's something that they're interested in, but obviously that would go through, not through an event permit, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I've around different communities, banners can work in a very effective way, as long as there's variety and they're clean, and what happens is they rip from the poles, and from a maintenance perspective. So I think it adds variety, and I think it's interesting. I think we need to look at maybe some of the poles and figure out how that's going to work long term. I just so happened to be in Xenia over the weekend, and their poles there are really interesting. I don't even know what made me notice it, but they have them set up to do a variety of different things. So it'd be an interesting example to look at for banners and poles and a variety of hangings and things. So they're equipped, because I think we'd have to be sure that, or they get wrinkled and then they end up not looking like we want them to look, right? But I think it's a great addition as long as the mechanics of it are effective. So thank you.
I like the idea of the banners on the poles. Planning and Zoning had originally looked at a request by Crawford Hoying to put permanent banners off the side of a building. And I think banners create vibrancy, but I think the temporary banners on the poles that get switched out a lot give a freshness to the activity that's going on instead of a permanent banner off the side. The other thing that I noticed too when I was doing some downtown, we tend to be a little bit cautious about some of the color and the banners, but I do think it gives this kind of a fresh face and you know something's going on. And I think the one on the side of the pavilion, if done correctly, is going to be a great photo opportunity for people. And I think you're going to see a lot of people taking pictures there. So I think it's a good way to showcase the city. I like it. All right, any other, Andy?
I'll just echo your comments. We're here to talk about these banners. I'm in favor of these banners. They're temporary, they're for a specific purpose. Any other banners, I think we need to have a conversation about.
So do we have some consensus? It looks like we do on this. All right, Jenny, will you please call roll?
Make a motion to approve the request?
I'll second.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Ms. Cram?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Mayor Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
All right, the next one is Planning and Zoning, ARB, BZA, Board of Zoning Appeals, and CSAC Rules and Regulations. And our staff report tonight is from Senior Planner Sarah Holt. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, councilors. There we go. Thank you so much. All right. These are the rules and regulations updates for all 4 of our boards and commissions, as you stated. And the purpose of each of the rules and regulations for the boards and the commission include the following on your screen. I won't belabor that. A little bit of background for you, though, as we all too well know, under emergency orders due to the pandemic, we had boards and commissions meeting virtually from March of 2020 to July of 2021. And recently, City Council has requested clarification for future emergency situations where the city might need to use a virtual format again for public meetings. And thus, the city's law director has prepared the virtual participation language that you have before you tonight. The language has been presented to Planning and Zoning Commission, the Architectural Review Board, the Board of Zoning Appeals in February, and also to CSAC in April. Staff has also included some additional language updates and has made sure that all the documents have the same language for consistency. So the details of the proposed virtual participation language is as follows. We know that City Council prefers all boards and commission members to participate in person when physical meetings are being held. And it would be the mayor's purview to determine virtual attendance for entire boards and commissions. And that would be in case of an emergency, which means during a pandemic kind of situation. 48 hours notice is required. The mayor may also permit individual members to participate virtually, again, in an emergency, meaning a pandemic situation. And in either case, technology must be in place so that the public can see and hear the meeting. And finally, applicants may participate virtually in the event of an emergency / pandemic, as approved by the chair of each board and commission. So to summarize the results of all 4 discussions, at the end of the day, all 4 boards and commissions recommended approval of the revised language. All 4 groups wish for a definition of emergency. And again, we know that this is related only to COVID or some other type of emergency, such as needing a quorum. The Planning and Zoning Commission requested clarification on which members were permitted to attend virtually, and my understanding is that that clarity has now been taken care of with the roles of the liaison. And then the ARB, BZA, and CSAC encouraged virtual participation for applicants at any time. So tonight, staff is requesting adoption of the revised rules and regulations as presented by the law director. And thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Sarah. Do we have any comment on this tonight? All right, council, would you like to ask Sarah any questions or?
I have a
Amy?
question, actually. So on the P&Z rules, number 4 says the mayor may determine that any regular or special meeting shall be held virtually. And you just said they can only do that for an emergency. What is it? This one just says flat out, the mayor may determine that any regular or special meeting shall be held virtually.
Can you go through that again? That was a little bit quick.
So the changes don't start until C, attendance of members, and number 4 is added new text. In your presentation, you said that the mayor could determine in the case of an emergency that the entire meeting could be held.
Correct.
That's not what number 4 says. Number 4 doesn't mention an emergency. It just says the mayor may determine the meeting can be virtual. So can she just decide, or he decide, the mayor just decide, next week, here's 48 hours notice, next week's meeting is going to be virtual.
It looks like our law director wants to speak to that. That is not the intent that we understand.
Right, so this is consistent with the language that you adopted with the rules of order. And so it is, I think, intended to be this emergency driven, but if there was, it just gives a little bit more latitude. I mean, that section would allow, it would mean the entire meeting was virtual.
Right.
And I guess there could be a scenario where you would allow an entire meeting. We don't say specifically emergency, we could include that.
I just didn't know what the discussion, I know this was discussed at 4 other boards. I didn't know if the intent was it was only for emergencies. Because the way I read this is that the mayor could decide on their own, we're going to hold it virtually.
Right. The intent is that it wouldn't be any sort of casual, thing. It would be dependent upon if we couldn't have a quorum of members. And so we said, we're going to put the whole meeting. But again, the whole meeting online, that's going to be a really rare occurrence if it's not pandemic related.
I mean, that's fine. If 4 other commissions looked at it, I just see that there's a loophole in there that they can do that. And then just for my annoying grammatical reasons, number 3, I think, needs to be rewritten slightly. I don't think we should say city council's strong preference is that. I mean, just say it's our preference. You don't need that. I think and you don't need to say that you meet in person if it's a physical location. Obvious, that's obvious. I would delete the part about in a physical location. But again, just grammatical things. You've had 4 people or 4 different boards look at these. So.
Yeah, I appreciate that, but that is identical to the language and the rules of order, and the council rule.
Andy?
I kind of like strong preference. To me, it's a policy, and we've agreed our policy, we strongly believe that we should meet in person. So I would leave that, but I get what you're saying. There are other nuances. Yeah.
Kathy?
First of all, Sarah and group, thank you very much for your work with the boards and commissions on this. Very much when we looked at ours last year, some of it hadn't been looked at for a while and some of it had, but it was just a nice opportunity. And I know one of the important things, one of the challenges here about wording and everything, is we wanted it to be consistent with what we did in council so that there wouldn't be a confusion why one board and commission was doing A and another board and commission member was doing B and council was doing a C. So I know the strong preference, I'll use that phraseology, from this group is that we get consistency across there, just so that the community knows what's happening and the members know. So I think I appreciate that the language is consistent across all of them. That is correct, right? This is identical to what we're seeing in the rules of conduct for council. The only question that I might have for you, what was the conversation about participants attending these meetings that is not an applicant in a case? That would be determined by the chair, right? Just as it is determined by the mayor for council. So if there is an expert with somebody that wants to speak coming from California or wherever, not here, that would be permissible, right? Because that is permissible with the council and the mayor, and that would be a chair's request. Is that right?
Chairman approved, yes.
Great. And then thank you also for the work on the election of the chair and the vice chair and getting those consistent across, because I know there was some discussion about that. So very much appreciate your work on that. Thank you.
Are we clear on the request for definition of emergency? Do you think that we have a clarity for our boards and commissions now, and they understand what the emergency is? I mean, what the definition of emergency? Okay. And the other thing too, and I do remember this last year, that one can't always determine what the emergency is. We didn't expect the pandemic, right? But we had a pandemic, therefore this is the new policy. And I like the idea that, you were suggesting to give us some flexibility. You don't know when you're going to need it, but when you do need it, you need it without having to go back and try to create a policy for it. So I understand that, and I appreciate that. I think that's probably a pretty important flexible piece that we have in the ordinance. So, all right, if there are no others, then I would like a motion to approve the board and commission rules and regulation updates.
I'll make a motion to approve the board and commission rules and regulations updates.
All right, may I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Jenny, will you please call roll?
Mayor Fox?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Ms. Cram?
Yes.
All right, our next item on the agenda is amending the utility extension policy, and our staff report is Deputy Director of Engineering, Aaron Stanford. Welcome, Aaron.
Good evening, members of council. As mentioned, we are here before you tonight to bring forward amendments to the utility extension policy. The public water and sanitary extension to existing developed property policy was first adopted by City Council in December of 2015. The policy's goal is to provide a process by which the city will identify, prioritize, program, and implement the design and construction of public utility service extensions to areas without current access to public water and sanitary sewer. As the city has begun implementation of the program, there have been some barriers to completion of the program that staff has identified and was one of the main drivers for bringing back the policy to council for review and consideration. On June 28th, the policy was referred back to City Council for review and consideration. And also for reviewing, feedback on desired policy revisions. The policy was brought before the Public Service Committee on August 23rd, October 13th, and most recently at the March 22nd, 2022 meeting. The committee has made recommendations to the revision of the policy at the most recent meeting. We will be reviewing the background of the program and those recommendations along with the proposed amended policy. As an update to the project implementation of the water and sanitary sewer connections, we're providing an updated inventory of the connections per project area for the water and sewer connections. As you see the table that's displayed, on the left side, you'll see each of the individual areas that we identified in the unserved area policy. that have been completed. Most recently, you'll see Area 1C, which was completed earlier this year. What we wanted to quantify in these tables was the effective connection rate that we've seen with each of these projects. So you can see, sanitary sewer connections, we're seeing largely around 50% on most of the completed projects. And then water connections, the other thing of notice is the first three projects we have listed, 11A, 11B, and 4B, did not include water. So it was sanitary sewer only. One thing that we wanted to point out on this chart is for Area 1C, the connection rate, 9%, obviously is heavily influenced on how new of a project it is. And just for feedback, I can tell you, I had a resident stop in on Friday to make a connection to 1C, and then I had a business actually make contact with me this afternoon. So we should see 2 more in that project category. The next chart, what we wanted to show is the connection rate that we've seen over time. So you can see starting in 2017, we're showing the connections both classified by the sanitary sewer and the water connections. Again, remember those first 3 years of water, the reason why you're seeing 0, because those projects did not include water connections, they were sanitary only. So what you can see on the 2 charts below is we're showing an increase in those connections over time. That's even considering the last 2 years of the pandemic, which we feel has heavily influenced the people's ability and financial being to make those connections. As part of our review and consideration with the Public Services Committee, one of the things that we wanted to complete, and we did complete, was an updated health risk assessment. So in partnership with Franklin County Public Health and Franklin Soil and Water, we had all of the sanitary sewer, the household sewage treatment systems analyzed and reviewed, just as we did with the initial program, to review all of the areas that we have identified for health risk. What came back from that was mainly and largely they were classified as nuisance issues. So we give some examples of non-approved aftermarket motors, missing lids, debris covering systems. In large part, it did not affect the overall health score of the areas. And one of the reasons for that is when you think about the overall health score and risk associated with sanitary sewer treatment systems, it has to do with soil conditions, high bedrock, locations to streams and rivers, and in large part those things did not change since 2015. But it was nice to get those things updated and just have that in consideration, because that was one of the points of prioritizations that we wanted to consider, was looking at that prioritized by overall health risk. And this is just an overall map of the entire city with the labels of the numerous areas of unserved properties. What you can see, what we wanted to point out with this map is the areas that have popped up, and very similar to the original study of the highest health risks are those areas. You can see a pocket along the north side of 161 between Riverside and the river. So if you look along that river area, you can see the parcels are highlighted with relative health scoring. And then also there's a lower area in the city to the south, just north of Tuttle, that also is indicated high health risk. In review of the policy, there were also a number of financial considerations that were explored during the evaluation. This has included voluntary assessment programs, special assessments, providing city financing for connections and construction costs, considering waiving and reducing Dublin's connection fees, waiving and reducing all fees, including Columbus's connection fees. Several options for policy revisions were presented to the Public Services Committee, including consideration of suspension of the program, consideration of reprioritization of utility extension projects, consideration of requiring the connection to water and sanitary sewer utility extensions, funding support to homeowners, and further encouragement for connections. And at our last March 22nd meeting, the 4 recommended revisions from the Public Services Committee were, number 1, to continue the policy to extend public water and sanitary sewer services to existing developed properties within the city. Number 2, to continue to prioritize utility extension projects based on the health risk assessments. Number 3 would be to waive 100% of the city's connection fees and make the waiver permanent to encourage connections. So as you well know, currently the policy provides for a 50% waiver of Dublin's connection capacity fees. Increasing this to 100% would add an additional $2,050. 1,100 of that and $5 would be sanitary, 945 would be water, based on a 3/4-inch water service. So that would be the impact of a reduction of fees to the homeowners. And then on to number 4, the last recommendation would be to encourage connections to the public water and sanitary sewer systems by providing information regarding overall city investment, the benefits of connection, and directing residents to any other available funding assistance programs. In addition to the information provided in the staff memos, presentations, associated data, an amended policy has also been included for your consideration for adoption tonight. Staff recommends the approval of the 4 recommended revisions by the Public Services Committee and the adoption of the amended policy. Staff is available for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Do we have any public comment on this? All right. Council, questions for Aaron?
One of the things that we've done a lot of research, and we've looked out there for any and all funding opportunities that we can, because we are very sensitive. We know that those connection costs are substantial, right? And we understand that. Even so much, I think in the fall it was through COVID funding, through the Ohio Department of Development, there was a new funding availability for water and sanitary sewer connections. And in that program, it also provided that it could cover homeowners' connections. Now, unfortunately, although we prepared 9 separate grants, we weren't awarded any of those funds. Some of the criteria was tough for us to meet, quite honestly. But so we've looked into some of those things. The other thing that we've looked into is funding through Ohio EPA. So one of the things that we identified was there's a Franklin County Public Health grant that they received. It's $150,000 for residents within Franklin County. One of the issues that we found out in speaking with them is twofold. One, $150,000 does not go very far. So one of the things they said, most of those dollars had already been spoken for. And then also there's quite a few pretty stringent criteria that it would take even to qualify for those funds. So we continue to look for those things for grants, for assistance, looking at other examples just to try to find any method that we can to provide those funding options.
Chris?
Aaron, I think there's good reason why all of the health assessed risks they all have one thing in common, right? It requires a lift.
Right.
And we could waive connection fees till the cows come home, and it isn't going to touch the expense it would take to run those sewer lines back up to either Dublin Road or Riverside Drive and the pump station necessary to push. So have we explored any options of putting some sort of subline along the river to a centralized lift station? Because they say it rolls downhill. So if it all went down the hill and went to a centralized lift station, that maybe we would just be one expense rather than a bunch of individual lift stations, not to mention the opportunity of failure given to a power outage or mechanical failure, something along those lines, and really the environmental impacts should those kinds of events happen. So I can't imagine really a point in time where we're going to get our most vulnerable folks to be able to do that and without some other solution. And and that is our drinking water, right? So now you have that raw sewage potential literally feet from going into the drinking water that is for the region.
So I think those are all really good points. And it's one of those things that as we taking a look at the program, for each of those policies, back before 2015, there was extensive preliminary engineering that went into layouts of all those areas. You can imagine, the work that it took to go into, layouts, how do you serve all of those areas, the costs. And in that area, I think one of the things that kind of drove some of that layout was those public sanitary sewer systems having access to maintenance. Now, that doesn't mean that we couldn't look at other alternatives, and quite honestly, I think on some of those, that may be where we have to go. It may be the solution is we may need to see, are there other alternatives that would encourage or be a little bit, now, those other alternatives may be much more expensive, but I think that may be something at the end of the day we may have to look at. If I had to guess with that original layout, and I can picture exactly what you're describing, I think some of it would be, one, the cost of acquisition. I think the other thing would be being able to get to those areas for maintenance. Doesn't make it impossible, right? But I think their first stab at it was looking at things that were most convenient, had public access for right-of-way and then maintenance.
I would imagine that there are grant dollars available for situations like this somewhere, because this really, not only could it be a public health emergency for the individuals that live there, it could be a public health emergency that would be far more widespread. So, I don't know if we could maybe look into what funding options there are, but I don't see, short of running something along the river for all of those parcels that are, below grade of the sewer line, I wouldn't even feel great about doing that if I were an individual, to have that lift station. There's too many things that can go wrong. And I think it's a responsible endeavor on our part to see what we can do.
Yes, and we continue, yes, absolutely, we continue to look at those other alternatives. I think, in the packet, and I do apologize, I know there was quite a bit of information in there. There were a few other programs that we identified. I'm thinking about one that was through the Ohio EPA that is on a yearly basis. It's coming up, but we're going to continue to look into those programs, and you're correct, some of those projects we can get grant dollars for, just like last year. We'll continue to look into those things and, make applications where we can to try to get those dollars. But yes, there are other things that we identified in that staff report you'll see in there through Ohio EPA that we're going to continue to pursue.
And maybe even some at the federal level. I know that there's a lot of air quality, water quality, really focus going on. So perhaps we could find something there too.
We definitely can make a strong case environmentally.
I know you are aware of all that stuff, and I appreciate you looking into it. I just can't imagine how it will happen apart from something like that.
Amy?
Just to add on to that, part of it could, if your investigations, I really think if you ask the landowners along Riverside Drive, we would give you the land. If you ran a line along the floodplain.
Yeah, if you easements, for sure.
Yeah, we would give you the easement, like straight up. I mean, it's floodplain, we can't do anything with it anyway, and it would save us so much money. So I honestly think you could get the right-of-way for the work along the river donated.
Well, that's the premise of all of this, is the right-of-way has to be donated anyhow. So, but to your point, I think that everyone that lives along the river would like to see that.
Kathy?
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to say thank you to Aaron, who's been working with the group for months and months and months, explaining this to us over and over, and appreciate it. It's complicated as this discussion tonight elicits here. Aaron, just could you remind us, what is the average total cost to connect for water or sewer roughly for a resident?
So if I'm remembering the numbers, which I should know, I've quoted them quite a bit of time, for water and sanitary combined, if they had both, the cost to a homeowner would be on average between $20,000 and $35,000.
And the Dublin city fee portion of this is?
For the capacity fee, it would $2,050.
$2,050.
That's with the 50% waiver, sorry.
Yeah. So, I mean, this was the discussion that the group had, is that, taxpayers have spent millions of dollars putting these lines in because first and foremost, it is the safety of all the water and the sewer of the entire community. And the goal, of course, is connections, right? So the community is invested in this, and how do we connect it? And I just wanted to share that the committee spent a lot of time with Aaron's help and staff's help putting together and looking at the numbers and the calculations here. And while you know, $30,000, if you think about it, compared to your home value, could be, you know, 10 or at least 10% or maybe more of your home value to connect this water. So the lift is high here. So I appreciate the longstanding policy, and number 1 and 2 confirm that, and I think that it is about health and safety and continuing those policies. I am supportive of waiving the smaller amount that we can in light of the bigger goal, and that is the health and safety and trying to do what we can to lower costs. The rest of those costs, frankly, are not within our control. They're still high. But this, in terms of the millions we've spent, the committee said, you know, a smaller amount, and if that can help somebody connect. So I'm supportive of this, and I appreciate staff and team's work in helping us work through what is a complicated and ongoing complicated issue. So thank you.
Aaron, I wanted to ask you, could you go back to the slide on the connections? Or the percentage of connections that we had?
Sure. Is this one you want?
Right, right. So, you know, I was on the public services last year, so I have background on this, and I certainly understand how difficult this is, and obviously it is very expensive. Knowing that our connection rate averages 37% on sanitary sewer and 46%, and noticing also that in the petition for extension by affected property owners, one of the requirements is that that it has to be signed by no less than 85% of affected property owners. If you were actually trying to encourage connection and it wouldn't cost the city anything, could you reduce that percentage to closer to what the average connection rate is, which is 50% or lower? In other words, let's just say that there's a neighborhood or a group in this area that needs to have connection that simply is not on the higher priority, right? And you're not seeing the connection anyway. If you drop that petition rate down to a closer, what is the average connection rate, you might get some folks who say, you know what, half this neighborhood wants it, and we can't get moved up the list because the other part of the neighborhood isn't ready to sign on. I mean, it's worth it. I mean, it doesn't cost anything to try. 50% might give them the opportunity to say, you know, there might be a stretch, like I know there are some, that only have about 12 houses on it. And half of those people really want it, but those other half are keeping it from happening. So is your thoughts on that?
So that is a good point. That is one thing through our analysis and in the considerations that we gave for the revisions to the Public Service Committee, that isn't something that came up. But quite honestly, it is something on a staff level we've been talking about recently, and that is one of the things, you know, thinking about that level, is that something that we should propose, kind of reducing that requirement? Because we recognize that that could be a barrier. I can't tell you that we've made a decision whether we would recommend that or not. I mean, one of the things, I don't know that I've thought through what unintended consequences may be to that, but I can tell you that is one of the things that we've been talking about recently, is that level of the percentage for that that petition, you know, is it too high? And I don't know that we have that answer. I can't tell you definitively that I would say it is or it isn't, but I understand your point. We've had that same conversation on a staff level.
I would really like to see that come back to us with some thoughts, because if you're only getting 50% or less anyway, why hold a neighborhood who really wants it to a higher standard than the rest of the community is being held to? Because you're connecting less than 50% anyway. And then my second question was, I know many municipalities allow your taxes, your property taxes, to have an assessment on it as one means to be able to, because this runs with the land, runs with the property, one means to be able to finance this because it is so expensive. But I didn't see that mentioned here. So is that a possibility that we could look at having a property tax assessment in order to fund? Here comes Matt. You'll be able to answer this question. I know when I lived in another community, we did that, and it, you know, when we sold the house, we either settled it or it just passed on.
Sure. So thank you for the question. Most of those special assessments are for the main lines themselves. So that's typically what we see is an area will create an assessment on a neighborhood, and it will be for the main line, not for the lateral connection or the private connection to the sewer. So in those communities, you'll see the property owners participating in the financing of the main line with the city. In our program, the city is taking 100% of that main line cost on, so there's nothing to share.
Is there no way that you can assess just for the laterals? You're not
No,
allowed to?
we've investigated that question, and because it's a private improvement, it's very difficult to find any public financing for it, and that really is why we're left with this. Waiving fees is really the best solution available.
Okay, that answers that question. All right, thank you. If there are no other questions or discussions, may I have a motion to approve the amendments to the utility extension policy?
I'll move.
All right, second,
Excuse me.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All right, Jenny, will you please call roll?
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Ms. Cram?
Yes.
Mayor Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Next item on our agenda is Waterways Maintenance Program, and our staff report is by Director of Engineering Paul Hammersmith.
Good evening, members of council. Certainly, council agrees the City of Dublin values the environment and recognizes Dublin's waterways are of great importance and contribute to the health, safety, and general welfare of the public. The preservation and maintenance and improvement of the waterways and the connected habitat are crucial to the protection of these natural resources. Thank you, Emily. The Waterway Maintenance Program is a new initiative that was approved with the adoption of the 2022-2026 Capital Improvements Program. The mission of the Waterway Maintenance Program is to preserve and maintain the open water courses within the city, preserving their stormwater carrying capacity, addressing any critical items of maintenance, and protecting the environmental health of the waterways. Don't want you to get distracted with that. I've got very important words for you. Starting at the end of last year, staff has been working with EMH&T to complete a recommended work plan for the Waterway Maintenance Program to address necessary maintenance work on city-owned or maintained land in the coming budget years. Staff has also worked with EMH&T to develop a work plan that should be addressed in 2022. Staff recommends City Council refer the Waterways Maintenance Program to the Public Services Committee to review the completed work and provide a recommendation to the full council regarding the proposed work plan. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Paul. Do we have any public comment for this? Thank you. All right, council, do you have any questions? Amy?
I just have one clarification. So what exactly are you asking Public Service Committee to do? Just to figure out, prioritize the projects?
Actually, yes, to actually look at the work program and the analysis that was done by EMH&T, and then the preparation of the plan. And then, yes, there are priorities in terms of areas for work in the future. So really just to review that completed work. And then what staff intends to do is carry those forward into the operating budget for those maintenance activities over the next several years.
Okay.
I would also add that there's some policy discussions that need to occur with reference to 186 of the inspection points were on city property with the balance on private property. We'd like to discuss some policy options for how we want to potentially address the inspection points and the blockages and erosion issues that may occur on private property. And that's something that we'd like to discuss with the Public Services Committee as well.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify what we were actually doing with the referral. Thanks.
Certainly.
Any other questions? I have one. If one wants to read this waterways study, where would we find it at?
It's actually not a completed document in terms of a narrative or study. It's actually all GIS data in a layer that we'll actually present to the committee and show to them. But it really is a living, breathing document on our network through GIS.
All right. And sort of in a summary, the condition of our waterways, what did you learn from the study?
There's work to be done. In terms of the city's component, it's, I think in total cost, aside from what we would do at the staff level, around $3 million. I think in terms of the work plan, it's around 1.8, because there's things that we can do at the staff level to address.
But there's quite a bit of work to do over the next several years for the city itself. I think generally speaking, we're blessed with great waterways. We just need to do a better job of taking care of them.
I'm just curious, Paul, in looking at, what the weak points or the touch points, is it in general clearing of them, or is it just the restoration of the riparian barriers that is the problem? I'm just, because it's,
Right.
everybody loves the waterways, loves the creeks. It's like the river runs through this whole town. So, what did you find that you were surprised about, or?
Probably the first priority with our waterways would be removing blockages, which is vegetation, the accumulation of vegetation in those high water conditions that kind of gets knitted together at certain locations. So I would say that's probably the first priority. Second is correcting erosion problems, especially where they occur that would impact public infrastructure, roadways, and then private property issues, possibly homes, pathways, those sort of issues. And then lastly, and we're going to take a look in the second phase, the riparian habitat and what we need to do in terms of its maintenance. So that'll be the second component. But this first piece was really the maintenance along our waterways. But there are several blockages that have happened both on public lands and private lands that obviously impact the carrying capacity of the stream itself. And then they can also result in erosion conditions just given that blockage itself.
All right. If there are no more questions or discussions, I move to refer the Waterways Maintenance Program topic to the Public Services Committee. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Jenny, will you please call roll?
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Ms. Cram?
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeRosa?
Yes.
Mr. Keeler?
Yes.
Mayor Fox?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks. Now our staff report. Megan?
Good evening. I do have a few quick items. We have Drug Take Back Day at the Justice Center this Saturday between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., and this is part of the National Drug Take Back event. We also received state approval a little sooner than expected, and we'll be implementing the new DORA boundaries beginning Thursday. So CPI staff will be communicating with businesses, residents, and updating all the signage in preparation for that. And then finally, Saperstein and Associates will begin conducting the 2022 Community Attitude Survey on Friday. So what that means is randomly selected residents will be invited to participate in a phone interview, and the phone calls will come from the 308 area code. Communications are being shared this week, letting residents know about the survey. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Our council committee reports. Administrative Committee?
Yes, thank you. Just one item. I would like to again thank Lynn Reedy for her work on, and her new upterm on the Bridge Park New Community Authority. Just to let folks know, we have one additional opening for that, also a citizen representative, and we will be seeking applications and conducting interviews for that shortly. So thank you.
Thank you. Community Development Committee? Mr.
Yeah,
Meyer?
the Community Development Committee met April the 12th, and as we know, it's the Beautify Your Neighborhood Grant Program, providing assistance to support Dublin homeowners, associations, and civic associations in enhancing their neighborhoods with high-quality beautification projects. We had 6 applications before us, and we're going to be asking for your approval for these. So it's the Village of Kaufman Park for $4,840, Killalea for $3,977, Hawks Nest for $5,000, Heather Glen for $1,398, Tartan West for $5,000, and Llewellyn Farms for $5,000. I will say that all these were endorsed by our staff who did a lengthy analysis. And I will also say the projects all had a visual street appeal, which will probably upgrade the visual aspects of our city in total. So the total amount was $25,215, which leaves us, I think we started out with a $32,000 budget, so we'll still have a chance to expand the program here a little later. So I'd ask you your indulgence in approving these 6 programs.
All right, thank you. Finance Committee, I'm not sure that Ms. Aludo, do you have anything?
No, we didn't have a meeting.
I think so. Public Services Committee, Amy?
All we did last time, we had the Emerald City came, we approved a new route. It is more than twice as hard as the old route if anyone was planning on running it. They found both hills in Dublin on Emerald Parkway. And the holiday market, we discussed that, and it's actually going to come back to all of council at some point.
All right, thank you. Our liaison reports for Dublin Board of Education. Christina?
Yeah, thank you. So Jane came with me. We met with a school board member, the superintendent, the treasurer. Dana was there as well. We really focused a lot of the conversation on mental and behavioral health and the challenges that have really stemmed from the pandemic and the ability to find healthcare providers in sort of a timely fashion. The schools have added some clinicians to their staff to help with that, but it still remains a big challenge for them. Both the board member and John Marshausen said that this was really the first time in their careers where they experienced parents and stakeholders asking more about mental and behavioral health than about how the city or how the schools are spending their money, which I just thought was fascinating. We stressed the importance of the relationship between the city and the schools. John was kind enough to thank Dana for really helping to make his first year as the superintendent of Dublin City Schools feel very welcome. And the city staff has been absolutely terrific in working with them. And so that's really great. They do have, this is the first time they've experienced 3 new board members all at once, and so they're still learning the ropes of things. And so we talked through that just a little bit, but that main focus was really about understanding how the pandemic has really appeared sort of as we get into post-pandemic. And one of the things that John said that was really interesting to me, and feel free to hop in, Jane, was that one of the biggest indicators of post-secondary success is when a child feels hope. And I thought that was just fascinating. He said the kiddos that are at the biggest risk are the kiddos, for lack of a better term, who have a sense of hopelessness. So I didn't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
No, I think that the mental health issue and the after effects of the pandemic have been very hard on teenagers and all the kids. And his recognition of the fact that it is affecting them and the sense of hopelessness is something that they're struggling with. So I was really moved by that, but I was really glad to see that they recognized and they're really working towards it. And we mentioned that even in our first responders, that we're running into the problems too. I know the police force is looking at social services, the fire department is looking at the need for social services, so it's definitely on the radar. Thank you, Christina. The Logan Union Champaign County Regional Planning Commission and US 33 Corridor Group. Andy?
So Vice Mayor DeRosa and I, along with Megan and Jenny Roush, attended the 33 Corridor meeting at the Honda Research Center. Megan set the bar in new presentation. They're now demanding PowerPoints for all presentations. She shared all the exciting things that are happening here in Dublin. Marysville Pumping Station and Water Treatment Plant project is underway. They plan on hosting a meeting there when they're finished. Jerome Township is underway on an Amazon distribution center at Warner Road and Industrial Parkway. Union County is still planning a solar farm, 10,000 acre solar farm, which I found pretty interesting. Next meeting is June 10th in Plain City. And we finished the tour up, or we finished the meeting up with a tour of the Honda Transportation Research Center, which is a huge asset to the 33 corridor. I had no idea. I thought it was a Honda operation, and it kind of is, but we saw Teslas, we saw Chevys, we saw pretty much every brand you could imagine running over bumps and driving around tracks and going up over hills and through puddles and all kinds of crazy stuff. So take that to mean that you have folks from really around the world coming to our area to test their vehicles. So huge feather in our cap. Thank you.
Thank you. That's fascinating. John, Dublin Arts Council and Veterans Committee.
The Dublin Arts Council has launched its new geocaching coin, and it's really something to behold. It is absolutely beautiful, and the mayor showed me the first one. She went, I wasn't able to make the meeting. And you can purchase one for $15. It's in brass and enamel, and the detailing is just awesome. If you actually go out and pursue the 15 or 16 river boxes, you get one done in blue enamel and brass, and it's really beautiful. The detail is just microscopic, and every little figure on there represents one of the boxes that you visited. I can't see anybody giving it away or recashing it because it's that good looking. I mean, no kid's going to give that coin away. Okay, and let's see. So the art exhibit right now running is through April 26th through June the 2nd, and it's called the College, the Art of Recycling. It's done by N. Penny Denning, a graduate of Cornell and OSU. And she fits and cuts images together in an irrational and quirky way, removing them from their original context. So it's sort of a very interesting exhibit. There is going to be a Meet the Artist Day on May 14th from 11 to 12. So if anyone's so interested, they might want to stop in and meet Miss Denning. Veterans Committee. The Veterans Committee was working on the Memorial Day program. The city will be providing, again, free lunch for all who attend on that day. The wreath-laying ceremony, the naval wreath-laying ceremony, which always occurred on the 161 bridge, will be transferred over to the new bridge, the Bridge Street Bridge, and that's where it will start. So if you're heading out to 161 for this, don't go there. It's going to be moved. And that's probably it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Amy, Washington Township?
Yeah, I was finally able to attend a meeting. They sworn 3 new firefighters that day, and they also kicked off, they're celebrating their 85th anniversary. So the big thing they discussed was the improvements are moving forward this year in Amlin. That's their biggest project going on right now. And that's about it. Speaking of clearing waterways, I know they had identified a tree that was in the Indian Run. Did they finally, they did get it out, right? Or can't? They were in the process, they had to wait for it to dry up a little so they didn't tear up the yard getting back to the stream to remove the tree. So that's all.
All right, thank you. Chris, Mid-Ohio Regional Planning and the Planning and Zoning Commission.
We held a meeting on the 14th, and you'll be pleased to know that the post-interchange gap financing was approved by the commission for our project there. So thanks to Megan and everybody, and certainly the membership of MORPC for supporting that for our community. And I was pleased to be elected vice chair of the commission. So it's a real honor to represent there, and I think it's advantageous for Dublin to have a voice when it comes to all things regional in that place. Relative to the Planning and Zoning Commission, we did have an agenda meeting last week. They had their meeting on Thursday night. There was no significant issues, and I think their meeting went quite well. You all saw the summary that was sent out the morning after, but they're doing good work. Thank you.
All right. Congratulations on that position, Chrissy. That's a great compliment. Council Roundtable. Amy, would you like to start?
Sure. I just had one thing. So I finished all my new local leader training that I've been doing for the past 2 months now. And I'd like to propose some possible training options that I found that I think would do well if we all heard it. And they're kind of related around professionalism and your public persona and how you're always a council member, even when you're at the grocery store or on the walking path. And it reminds you of things we should all remember, that when we're using our social media or talking to people. It also went into just professionalism and leading meetings and always considering you're on the public record and some items like that. And I would also suggest there was some training on just interacting with not only the public, but also staff and how to use everyone's time wisely. So I just propose that some of those topics would be great for all of us to hear. The Ohio Ethics Commission does it for free on some of those topics. Stephen Smith Jr. did some of our training at some of the things I went to. He did an excellent job. So we have, it's not like we have to go find a consultant. I think we have the resources. We just need to find the time. And I would propose that we do that.
So what's the appropriate attire for a council member to go to Lowe's?
They told us on Saturday, they said, if you don't want it on the front page of the paper, don't do it or say it.
Sure.
All right, so Councilmember Keeler, would you like to continue on the roundtable? You're good. John?
Yeah, I just want to mention that we are having a National Prayer Day, and the country and the world could probably really use this right now. It's going to be at the Grace Point Church at 3950 Summit View Road, and it'll be at 7 p.m. So it will be, let's see, I think it's going to be the, let's see here. It will be May the 5th. So I think the world could use all of our help, so.
Christina? Chris?
A couple things. We are the Intelligent Community Forum that I serve on for the National League of Cities. We had a meeting on April the 13th, and we were able to bring forward requests that we would like to see the National League of Cities do resolutions to the federal government on. I took to them our desire to have a resolution before the federal government on home rule, particularly as it relates to the ability to install, maintain, and utilize fiber optics. They were agreeable to that, so when that resolution gets presented before the Senate committee, I will let you know. So hopefully that we can start, we have not had tremendous luck pushing up from the bottom. Maybe we will have more luck pushing down from the top. So wanted to let you know that we started the process on that and have made those requests. Want to congratulate the community champions Saturday morning that Chamber in the city schools held the Community Champions Awards, and it always is an inspiring time to see the greatness that's happening in the youth of this community. So I want to congratulate all of the folks that were recipients of the Community Champions Award. And lastly, I'd just like to thank the Jasco community for the gala that they held on the 21st. It was really nice to have. I know we had some consul generals in the room from Canada and other places, so it was very good to have them and host them in our city and have the opportunity to have good conversation with them. That's all I have. Thank you.
Kathy?
Yes, thank you to staff for another successful HOA spring meeting. It was incredibly well attended. I think people were happy to get together again. So thank you for staff for your work on that. And I heard positive things from the residents to be together. Also, my congratulations to the JASCO 25th anniversary. The Corporate Lifetime or the Corporate Achievement Award, first annual awards that they're giving out, went to the Honda organization and all of their work. And so that was just a lovely, lovely evening. Congratulations, Chris, on your work for the VP. That's wonderful and important to us. And then finally, I get to, on behalf of council, wish our mayor a happy birthday later this week. So happy 25th, Jane.
I appreciate that, especially that little lie you just told. Also, I agree with Chris, the Chamber Champions Award ceremony. One of the things that was really special about that is that the awards were given for community service and volunteerism. So often, our students are awarded for their scholastics and they're awarded for their athletics. But in order to combat hopelessness, I think these awards do that. There were over 200 students that were recognized for the work they do because they just feel the need to do it. So I think that's such an important thing that the Chamber does and that we participate in. Also, the Japan American Society of Central Ohio, JASCO, had their 25th anniversary, and we just want to thank them for the work they do to bring the Japanese and American cultures together, both in the community, the things they do for the residents here, that we have such a large population, 2,500 Japanese nationals living here in the city, and what they do for the businesses. It just is so dynamic, and they employ so many people and just lift the Central Ohio area. You've been receiving CAMA updates, the Central Ohio Mayors and Managers Association and the Ohio Mayors Association information. I just encourage you to read it. If you have questions that you need to ask me about, I'm more than happy, but trying to feed you as much information that's going on at the local level and at the state level. And as Chris says, the more we can do to maintain home rule, the more that we can do to maintain our autonomy is so important. And then lastly, I just want to thank our staff for the Franklin Street improvements a meeting we had the other day. I've got nothing but great comments from the residents talking about how much information, how you listened, how the options were there, and they promise, and I have this on solid ground, that they will not delay your schedule, that you'll get the answers that you're looking for, and they really appreciate and want me to pass that on. So if there's nothing else, I call this meeting to adjournment.